is like sort of a ghoul type thing. I don't know. I actually think once we were all dressed and I had my suspenders, I think he missed out on being with the family costume. I think he sort of regretted it a tiny bit.
So tell us where you're watching from. And if you're new, it's city, state, and what part of the house. And let us know if you participated in any Halloween activities. So Adrienne, I know that you were out, being the Black woman who loves outdoor spaces yesterday.
Yeah, so there was no costumes involved in this house, I will say. So I love Fatima's family dressing up together. I have a purple and black witch's hat that I wear every year, and it is probably 7, 8 years old now. So that was the only costume like thing that came out. But I really like Halloween, and it was bad. I wasn't sure if kids were going to come out and, in their costumes and trick or treat or not. I noticed that my neighbors had put out some goodies outside. My other neighbor set up a little table in their driveway. And then we set up little goodie bags with face masks, like kids' face mask and little kids' face mask holders where you can place your face mask and carry it in your book bag. And we set all of that up, socially distanced. We put the little hooks, 6 feet apart, and as much as we could in our yard, on both sides, right? On both the curb side and the actual, little yard. And we waited. I wasn't sure if kids were coming or not, but we waited. And then they kind of started to trickle. It was interesting because it was really the younger kids, right? It was parents out with their younger kids. And they were just sort of looking at the decorations, and they were appreciative that there were some things out for the kids. The kids didn't care. They were, happy Halloween and trick or treat. And they were just having fun. So I was glad that it remained a possibility for kids to still have some fun on Halloween. And now I got 30 gift bags or goodie bags. I gotta find something to do with.
Take those kid masks.
I will send them to you.
So in my HO, so in our community, if you have your light on, that means you're open for trick-or-treaters. So my brother is, we're together this week, and he had the light on, just happened to have the light on. I'm like, turn that light off. We are not open for trick-or-treaters. So for our next segment, Fatima's going to be in conversation with Dr. Karinn Glover, who literally is an unnamed contributor. So we might as well just name that she's a contributor. And so she's going to be talking about centering our mental wellness. I've come with my Snuggie for this segment. And so I'm ready to be like, listen, Dr. Glover, what do you have to say for me? Because we want to be hopeful moving forward, and I am, and she's going to give us some techniques to move past this moment.
Well, I am so glad that she is here. Everywhere I go, I've been talking to people, and they're saying, I'm having trouble sleeping, or this pandemic plus pre-election stress is combining in very special ways. And when you add on the additional responsibilities have with care and work, people feel like they're really out at the brink. And so we are so glad to have you back, Dr. Glover, who is an attending psychiatrist and with the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and just a warm balm to the soul. So thank you for being with us back again today to sort of check in on ourselves in this time. And this is sort of a time of year, I sort of think that post-Halloween going into Thanksgiving and the holidays is a time of year where you often see people be stressed out without a pandemic and without one of the most important elections of our lifetime. What are you seeing? Are you seeing an uptick in people seeking mental health care this year? Are people seeking the support for these times?
Absolutely. So one of the things that jumped out at me was when we went fully remote with our therapist and our psychiatrist, our no-show rates plummeted. So our show rates sometimes range between like 90 and 110%, meaning people are like, oh, I don't have to get on the bus to go see my therapist. I can stay in bed and see my therapist. So when Glenda said she had her Snuggie ready, I'm like, you and all of my patients, because they are in bed. Like this is the best thing that ever happened to psychotherapy. So yeah, we're definitely seeing an uptick ever since the pandemic, for sure. But then as the daylight has decreased and the sun rises later and sets earlier, people are just not as motivated to even leave their home at all. So we're definitely seeing people. Yeah.
Well, you know, again, I've talked to a number of my friends who have said they're sleeping a lot less or waking up in the middle of the night and up for hours. And, you know, that to me seems like one of the signs we should be looking out for in terms of our own wellness. But what are some of the things you might think you're okay, and maybe okay for a pandemic, right? But what are some signs that we should be on the lookout for with regard to our own mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones that you mentioned are super important, right? So sleep and your energy level and your ability to focus. It's really, really hard because we get lots of interruptions from our kids, our family members, right? The notifications on our cell phone, right? But I think it's super important to keep track of your appetite as well and your level of physical activity, because I think when you find yourself needing to modulate your mood through alcohol or through food constantly, and foods that maybe are not so great for you, like junk food, it's time to take a look at yourself. I think it's also probably one of the biggest things to notice how often you are filled with despair and to notice it. Because one of the hallmarks of depression is the ability to, when you lose the ability to enjoy things that would normally bring you pleasure. If you're losing that, we call that anhedonia. If you're losing your ability to feel pleasure, pay attention. If you find yourself feeling very hopeless, filled with despair, or feeling like you're a failure, talk to somebody.
Well, but you know, sometimes it's hard to distinguish, right? After the vote on confirming Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, I had a gathering of my staff, and they they were expressing that they were frustrated, they were angry, they were feeling hopeless, they couldn't understand how this was happening. How do you distinguish reactions to the events in the world from something that maybe this is more, maybe I need to reach out to someone?
Yeah, if it goes on for more than 2 weeks, that's when we really start to pay attention. So if you have a week of feeling like you're eating ice cream for dinner and you're chasing it with a shot of chocolate rum, which is maybe what I did
actually
that
sounds
day.
Good, but okay.
Look, when I tell you, we'll talk. So like, right, if it lasts a couple of days, totally fine. If you find that it's happening for just like 6 days a week for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, that's when we really start to get worried, right? Because that's when we recognize that maybe a habit is setting in or a pattern is setting in that maybe needs to be disrupted. Also, if you find yourself, when you recognize you're down and you reach out to the people you love and you reach out to the things that normally give you pleasure or hope, and those things don't work, keep on paying attention to it. That's all.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the small things, in terms of developing habits that we can take to nourish our minds or to help restore us in this time?
One of the things that I've been talking about, because I hope we're all clear, like psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists, your licensed marriage and family therapists, all of us are going through this with you. So all of us are just as afraid, are just as freaked out as everybody else. So we're all this is the first time I've ever gone through a trauma with my patients, right? So we find ourselves sharing ideas. And we're always improvising ways to keep on making joy. So I think one of the things that we all have to do is maintain physical activity. In these days, we have to be outside for some portion of the day to just get 30 minutes of sunlight on our faces, right? We need to get our vitamin D. We need to get our blood pumping, because we have to get our heart rate up, because with all of this stress that we're under, all of this toxic stress that we're under, we have to sort of close the circuit, meaning when we're exposed to toxic stress, we have to work it off some kind of way. And when I say work it off, I'm not talking about going to the gym and lifting, 150-pound barbells. I'm talking about simply taking a walk for 30 minutes if you can. If you can do something in your own home, some stretching. If you have back issues, lay on the floor and try to lift your legs up. It's some kind of physical activity to just get back in your body. And then also talking with loved ones and sharing a laugh. So if you can watch a film or watch a comedy routine or something, do it. And then see the face of a person you love if you can.
So can we talk a little bit about the perceptions of mental health in the Black community? I mean, in a lot of places, even with everything that is going on with the twin pandemics, with all that we are bearing, especially in the Black community, there still is a sense that it isn't typical to seek help for mental health. How do you
I think so. Luckily, I often don't have to do the convincing, because by the time they get to a psychiatrist, somebody has already convinced them that they need to talk to somebody, typically. But I think one of the things that I recognize about some of our spiritual practices is that we conflate, right? We sometimes confuse spiritual strength, or the lack thereof, like spiritual weakness, with depression, or spiritual weakness or lack of faith with anxiety. And I want you to understand that those are actually different things. And I think that's something I work with my patients, where I will tell them that it is okay to have lots of faith in God and yourself and people you love, and have anxiety and have depression. You would never tell somebody with diabetes, if you only had greater faith, your diabetes would go away. If you just worked hard, if you weren't weak, your diabetes would go away. So why should we apply similar judgments to mental health when we all know that mental health issues are in many ways rooted in inflammation and inflammatory cytokines, inflammatory chemicals that the body sends out, and that they're rooted in a low amount of serotonin and dopamine. So we've got biochemical reasons for behavior, is my point.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that that's a really beautiful way for people to think about it, that it is one of the many tools. Your faith may be another tool, but your health and your mental health is something that we have to attend to, especially in these times. And Dr. Glover, I love having you with us. I kind of wish I could carry around in my pocket with your wise advice all the time. But your call out to Black joy and wellness just fills my spirit for sure. And one last thing I wanted to mention, speaking of Black joy, to get us through this election night, my organization at the National Women's Law Center published an election night survival guide that comes complete with horoscopes and cocktail recipes and amazing playlists and journal prompts and all the things that you will need to get you through Tuesday night and maybe beyond. We shall see. So you can find that on nwlc.org. And Dr. Glover, hopefully you'll check it out too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. And let's bring back Glenda.
I'm back. Thank you so much, Dr. Glover. Some really great practical practical survival skill guide for us. So I am excited to have a conversation about snacks. So I am not a big snacker, but I do love to eat. And so whether you're packing snacks to tide you over while many of us may be waiting in line to vote over the next couple of days, and particularly we are anticipating long lines on November 3rd. And as Michelle Obama said this summer, make sure you're packing a brown bag lunch, brown bag dinner, a brown bag full of snacks. We want to talk about potentially making those brown bags healthy. I certainly will share that over the last couple of weeks, I have my healthy Sunday meal preps have slowed down. So today I have actually started my meal prep for the week. And so we're going to be in conversation with Wintana Kiros, who is a registered dietitian and health coach. And apparently, the SIP hosts have already said that she's about to be our health coaches once we get past November 3rd. And so we're going to cover a variety of discussions around behavioral change. It's the approach that Wintana takes around helping her clients build a healthier lifestyle that will work for them. And that's me saying amen in my corner, is finding something that works consistently in our own lifestyle. So today she's going to be giving us some tips for how to pack nutritional and flavorful menus this week. So Wintana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to share some tips for, of course, election night, but also and beyond, right? These are tools that you can use down the line too. So go ahead.
Yeah, and so don't y'all look at, I love a good tablescape. So do y'all see this tablescape? It is amazing. And of course that Papa Red is popping. So share a little bit about what I don't think it's a unique approach, but I definitely think it centers the way you bring your culture to how you approach a discussion around healthy eating. So share a little bit about how you as a health coach have created a unique approach to helping your clients change their lifestyles around healthy choices.
So one of the things I focus is on behavioral change. That's important to me than just dieting. So there are 5 behavioral change steps that happens especially for people who have successfully made positive lifestyle change. So those behavioral change model helps me identify my clients at what stage they're in the change. So there's the pre-contemplation change, there's the contemplation change, and then there is the preparation and action and maintenance stage. So all these clients come in different stages of change when they are approaching me. So the pre-contemplation is the person who has no intention of changing, but is forced to see me because they're either forced by their physician to go see a dietitian, or their spouse has threatened them that they need to make changes. And the contemplation stage is they know they need to change, but they don't know the how-tos. So those are great clients to have, because then you are equipping them with all the resources, information. That's where I build foundational information. And that preparation stage are people who already have the information and have started to work on making changes, but they don't have specific strategies to make those changes. And I also meet people who are already in action. They've done things, but nothing has been consistent. So they need tools and strategies to be consistent as well. And also, few clients are also in the maintenance phase where they've accomplished their health goals, they've done everything, but they also reach out because they want accountability so that they don't regress into the poor habits they come in. So these model of change helps me meet my clients where they are, but what's important to me is to honor their culture and tradition. So it's sustainable and long-term.
Yeah, and we don't have to wait until January 1st to do that.
Nothing special about January 1st or Monday. Everyone says, I'm going to start something on Monday. Nothing.
As we just said, the day after the election. And so we are getting ready to go into the holidays, but today we're going to talk a little bit about prepping for election day and election night. So I am voting on election day. I live in the Northeast, so my lines are probably not going to be long like Georgia and Florida. And I'm voting in the morning. And so want to share there's some thoughts of some healthy choices of what we could pack with us in our pocketbooks and our book bags. And then Higher Heights is partnering with Essence, our live stream partner, and we will be doing an election night watch party on Tuesday with our SIP host, who will be part of the Black Women Lead Spin Room. And so y'all should join if you're watching this. We're starting at 8 o'clock, and you can watch this in any of the streaming you're watching today. And so we're telling people to make sure they have their election night snacks. It might be a long night. So the thoughts is throughout the day, Wintana, what are some thoughts of how we can be healthy throughout the day with making snacks?
Absolutely. So I say honor your cravings, but to make sure that you pair it with protein, a healthy fat, and fiber. And a quick acronym for you to remember is called PFF, making sure all the snacks that you like. So for example, if you like chips, make sure that you have a guacamole to pair it with. So these are all the list that I have right here. So nuts are a good source to combine with any of your foods that you like to eat. Yogurt, plain yogurt is a good one that you can make it savory or sweet. You can do a bowl of yogurt and like fruit. And then if you really like chocolate, go for dark chocolates, 70% or more, because they are less in sugar and have fiber. So that's where the fiber and comes, and less sugar. And then you have low-fat cheese that you can pair with any of your chips as well. And you can pair it also with a good bean dip, like hummus or anything of that nature. You can pair the things that you like. But your question is also on the go. On the goes are like these little nut packets. They are ready to go. They have fruits and nuts. And so this is all ready to go with a good source of protein, fat, and fiber. And then another idea is cutting up your veg like this. Your bell peppers and celeries are in here, and put a really good bean dip at the bottom to go. And there, if you are looking for something sweeter, then you can do a nut butter of your preference at the bottom, and then cut up a fresh apple. And a trick for apples, you know how they go, they turn brown fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can squeeze fresh lemon on top of them, and you can also sprinkle some cinnamon, and it'll be really delicious. So these are on the go. These three are option for sweet, savory, on the go. And you can also make your own nut snacks by combining like we have walnuts here, we have almonds here. You can mix and match as well. So these are on your go options, and these are snack dips and things that you can have while you wait for results that are full of protein, good source of fat and fiber.
Yes, I love the strawberry, your little strawberry pops.
Oh, yeah. And you can dip your strawberries with chocolate, like so. So you're getting your fiber and your sweet here. So the idea is not to eat just a source of carbohydrate by itself, because it will spike up your blood sugar, making it worse at the end of the day. You'll be fatigued and tired.
Yeah, I absolutely love the little jars. I would have never thought of doing that with the peanut butter or almond butter. Very smart. Or the bean dip. Would have never thought of that. So that's a great idea. So I want to talk a little bit about our communities, right? You know, oftentimes, as you state, like culture plays a role in our food choices. And many, you know, Black and brown households may not have, you know, Whole Foods or a farmer's market near us with the freshest produce. You know, we are still fighting to ensure that, you know, our communities aren't food deserts, that we all have access to cage-free eggs, and that we have the freshest produce. How do you usually encourage encourage our community to approach finding nutrient-rich ingredients for any recipes you recommend, regardless of where we live, if we live in rural America or if we live in an urban community?
That's a great question. So the idea is that I actually encourage my clients to get canned sources of foods, and foods that are frozen. And a frozen fruit option, vegetable option, and frozen fruit option as well. You can access them, and they're full of fiber. They're low in fat usually. The only thing I would recommend is that when you are looking at the canned products, to opting for the low sodium options, and then also buying them in syrup, and not buying them in syrup and buying them in fruit juices. That's very important. And as long as you actually rinse the product that's in here, the nutrition is dense. And the thing that most people, unless and if you're buying your produce straight from a fresh farmer's market, buying frozen and in can is actually better. The nutrition stays intact, waiting for you when you're ready to eat it. So for my busy clients who don't really have time sometimes to cook, I really encourage them not to waste food and keep purchasing foods that are in frozen form. So whenever they're ready to eat, they can just defrost easily and consume. And the nutrition is high and good quality and there.
I have to say, I struggle with that. I love fresh vegetables from fresh food, but over the last couple of weeks, you know, forgetting to cook something like, is that bok choy that I bought that I forgot?
Hey.
Yeah, so that is a great tip. Well, we certainly will want to have you back for a conversation around the holidays and how do we approach the holidays in a healthier approach and still very flavorful. So thank you so much for joining us at the SIP. And again, this is Wintana Kiros. And she is going to be the SIP's healthy food coach as we approach the end of the year, healthier than we started the year. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And so it is all things election. And so we have Adrienne going to be in conversation with one of our go-to political strategists, Karinn Finney.
Thank you, Glenda. And so now I am, and Wintana, I am starving and also very much, thinking about the course correction that will need to be done, certainly on my diet once we get beyond election day. So we are on the last Sunday, as we said, when we started out before election day. We are, it both feels like we are extremely close to election day and also still far away. So we all, I think, have some, PTSD a little bit from 2016, trying to make guesses and predictions about what might happen nationally, what might happen in each state. And so I think some of us are still trying to do that, and some of us are also trying to just put our heads down and not focus on, what the predictions are. So I am happy to be joined by, as Glenda said, one of our go-to folks and brilliant political strategist, Karinn Finney, who, maybe will offer us some thoughts that look like predictions, or at least some thinking about what we might be able to expect. So welcome, Karinn, once again, and thank you for being with us here on, I know, what must be a crazy day for you as well.
Well, it's so great to be with you. I love joining this SIP. It's always smart conversation. And, when in that first conversation about what brings you joy and keeps you calm, my sweet dog was sitting right next to me. And I was thinking, I'm so grateful for her, because that sweet dog, she brings me joy. I have to go out and walk her every day. So it's like, she is like a full service, advice. To what you're saying, I need it. The sleeplessness, the anxiety.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And as having been through it, in 2004, I remember standing on the stage in Boston with my dear friend David Morehouse. I had worked for Elizabeth Edwards as we had made the decision to send everybody home and wait overnight to try to figure out, sort out the election. And then to be in that moment again in 2016. Yeah. Child, let me tell you, when they called it, I opened the mini bar in the hotel I was in.
Yeah. I can't believe you waited that long.
I was trying to be, I was like, well, in case we win, I don't want to be drinking. I got to be ready to. And then I was like, oh,
get it.
Yeah. And then I think you know, I will say, working in Stacey Abrams' race in 2018, I think that really gives us a model for how we should be thinking about what election night could look like and the next successive days, because, and I don't know if Fatima would agree with this, but I think that it's very likely we'll have some results kind of in the wee hours, but you can see the Trump campaign is already setting up the premise to challenge votes, to challenge the laws, to challenge, you know, they're trying to challenge drive-up voting. They're trying to challenge 100,000 votes in Texas.
Right.
So,
asking that votes be thrown out or not considered, right?
That's right.
So
I think it's good for us to be prepared for that, so that we're not shocked and we can stay focused the next day on whatever it is we may need to do. And it's fine if that thing is to celebrate, by the way.
Right. Well, that's actually a really good comparison, I think, for folks, because we saw that happen and it didn't completely turn things upside down, right? Like, we knew that the election was, you know, that there were many questions that needed to be answered. And as it sort of went on in days, we learned. But that's 2018 for Stacey Abrams' race is a really good comparison, I think, for folks to think about, as they're trying to calm their own nerves about what might happen on election night. So there are some things, so we may have that for sure in terms of but let's talk about some things that people look to as we're waiting, because we know that there are some races that will be able to be called on election night. And so let's talk a little bit about other things that people should be looking at to gauge how whether or not their preferred candidates might have won outside of the presidential race. What other races, state or congressional, should people be looking at?
Well, I would advise keeping an eye on Georgia, 2 very important Senate races there, and Stacey's work in 2018 and prior to that. Really, this is a lesson for the Democratic Party to play the long game. That's been, you know, it has been election after election after election. So I think we're going to get there this time. 2 really dynamic candidates for the Senate, some really important House races. So I would keep an eye on Georgia, also because it'll tell us something about what's happening in the country around the presidential. Obviously, there's also an interesting Senate pickup in Montana, potentially, with Steve Bullock, the former governor, very popular, was able to win when Trump won. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye out for as well. You know, always, I think we'll be looking at Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I know a lot of folks have been talking about that, but they really are key states. And I would say keeping an eye on, you know, we have a record number of women, and particularly Black women, who ran this time. And it will be a historic opportunity. It is a historic opportunity to have more women and more women of color in Congress. So I would go to the Higher Heights website and check out some of the candidates they've endorsed.
Yeah, I think that's, so you know, for Black PAC, we've been engaged in a lot of the Senate races. I think that it's going to be important to watch those for the reasons that you said, whether it is the North Carolina Senate race and some of the potential pickups, but also the seats that need to be held, like the Michigan race. And then to your point, their last point, I think, go to Higher Heights website and look at those women, because those will be actually, I think, the inspiration of the night will be those races, right? So I'm particularly looking at Joyce Elliott's race in Arkansas for my nightly inspiration on Tuesday, because I believe that we will get that one. But there's some other things that will, when we think about the direction of our country, when we think about the health of our democracy, it doesn't all just lie in the outcome of the presidential race. And so these races are important as well.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I have to be working on this race, but regardless, I would want us to be keeping an eye. Jamie Harrison in South Carolina, he is even with Lindsey Graham. Now, this is someone who came, you know, nobody believed he could win. The same thing happened with Stacey, right? And what did you see? I mean, this happens with Black candidates, right? There's all these questions about, is it a good investment? Can you really win in the South? If he wins on, you know, on Tuesday, that will be, you know, phenomenal. just a victory in so many ways.
Yeah.
But also, it's another race that is changing that state. It will have turned out, I mean, already Jamie Harrison has more votes from African Americans than Barack Obama got in South Carolina.
Right.
So we've already changed the composition of the electorate. And so that's the other thing to be looking at when we look at turnout,
Yes.
places where we're changing the electorate, because we have to remember voting has to be a lifestyle, not a one-time thing. We're going to have, you know, elections in 2 years. We've got to continue to both elect great people and, you know, ask for the receipts for the people that we vote for.
Yeah. Can we stay there for a second, Karinn, just on what we're seeing in terms of what the electorate is looking like right now? Because you know, we've had there's more than 90 million people have voted so far.
That's right.
Right. Which is sort of phenomenal all by itself.
Yes.
But I think that we are seeing surges in voting among the base that we are all out talking to, and I think that it's important that when we look to and try and understand what's happening, and we're comparing it to other things, that it is important to think about the fact that there is a surge in voting, particularly among Black voters, above where we were at this point in 2016. And I want to raise that because I've seen a lot of, like, it feels like this sort of narrative that's beginning to emerge in the press that's sort of like, well, Black people aren't voting as in the same way that their counterparts are, right? That we should just tamp that down for a minute.
We really should. And also we should with regard to the Latino vote, because there are some extraordinary turnout numbers there as well. And, you know, here's the thing I want us to all think about. We are not going to take the rap for this one. Okay. Black women got it right in 2016. We will get it right again in 2020. We're going to do our part. Black folks are doing their part. The question is what's going to happen with white voters, particularly as we've been watching these white suburban women who have been moving away from Trump, who seem to, since 2018, have been continuing to lean Democratic, have been continuing to stay engaged. So I think that's what we also want to keep an eye out on. And that's something that we want to watch as we see the demographics of who's voting.
Yeah.
That will tell us something. I mean, look, so I just think that's so important that we, like you say, push back on that narrative and we're not taking the hit again, people.
We're not, and we're not going to let it get set up. Okay, I'm being rushed off. We're being rushed off the stage, Karinn, but I have one more question for you. And that is, what are you watching? Which states should people be looking to on Tuesday night to give us an indication of where things are going?
So based on what we're seeing in the primaries, or I'm sorry, in the early vote, I would keep an eye on Texas. Really interesting what's happening there. That is about the future. And so I think we want to keep an eye on that. Georgia, as I mentioned, really important. And also it tells us something about where the electorate is. If we are seeing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win in Georgia, that tells you that Trump is in trouble in Trump country. And that's going to be very telling. And then obviously, you know, Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania are key, although, you know, the New York Times has a little thing where you can go on and play with the states to kind of see where the numbers move. And I've been doing it's just to try to get a sense. And so, you know, look, Wisconsin and Michigan, the, you know, Vice President has been there the last couple of days, which I think is critically important. Barack Obama was there with Stevie Wonder. I mean, so I think the fact that they are paying attention to important places like that really matters. And let's see on election day how that bears itself out.
Yeah, I think that's great news, because I think that sometimes people get anxious because they're not sure what they should be paying attention to on election night. I'm going to be looking at Florida and North Carolina because they got to count their votes that night. So we will know something one way or the other. And those are two big states. So really helpful. Thank you so much, Karinn, for coming on with us again. And I suspect that we will see you again as we move toward our election night coverage, and we'll be looking for you to bring us some insight. So appreciate you always for joining us. And I think I'm turning it back over to Glenda.
You are. Thank you, Karinn. So it's Sunday, y'all, and I actually had an opportunity to virtually go to 2 churches today. And so this next segment are with two of my favorites for a variety of reasons, two amazing faith leaders, but also two amazing civic leaders and leaders of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and my favorite sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So they intersect in all things that I am personally involved in. And we are going to be in conversation with Roslyn Brock. She is the chairman emeritus of the NAACP and founder and CEO of Equity Partnership Strategies, LLC, and then Shavon Arline-Bradley, founding principal of R.E.A.C.H Beyond Solutions, LLC. And so when it comes to activating voters in our communities, there is no other institution that has been powerful in organizing Black voters than the Black church. What is it about faith and democracy that makes them go hand in hand? Well, today's guest, we're going to explore that conversation. Literally, the two church services I went today, each sermon was based on the fundamental importance of our democracy and how those virtually sitting in the pews across this country have an important role to play in our democracy. So thank you so much for joining us, Roslyn and Shavon.
How are you?
Girl, I'm struggling.
Let us pray. Let us pray.
Let's pray. So I will share with you.
We're glad to be here with you, Sora.
Yeah. So so for those who know, one of my brothers is a songwriter and gospel artist, and so
Phenomenal songwriter and gospel singer.
We love him.
He debuted a song today in church because I did visit his church in Houston, Texas, virtually, and he had said earlier this week. And so I know people are going like, who's your brother? It's Kirk Carr. And so he had said, we have to be mindful that we just need to, it's one day at a time. And so he wrote a song, I guess, this week based on part of that conversation. He's been thinking about and praying about this, which is thank God for this day. And that is the hope of our people in our history. And so, as I mentioned, the Black church plays an important role. So would love to hear from both of you. What about hearing a message of importance of voting from faith leaders like you is so effective in getting Black communities to overcome all of the obstacles that we are faced during this election cycle?
So, great question. I think as you're considering, Black faith leaders in general, the church has constantly been at odds with this space. I call it the myth of the separation between church and state, where Black churches have not had that separation, right? That has been historically the place where you got your information. Mm-hmm. Never necessarily been partisan, but it's been about gaining your information. And so where the pulpit is so important, and if you're not in church, if you're at a mosque or at a temple, wherever you are in your faith journey, that place of articulation has been where you can find trusted facts. And the intent is to find out where pastors, clergy, faith leaders across this country can speak truth to actual issues that we call practical theology, what your everyday churchgoer is going through. And so the idea of civic engagement, giving people to get to the polls, to understand that this is part of your civic duty. Like, you can't say that you love the Lord and don't do this work, right? And don't go vote. That's not synonymous, because Jesus and justice for us are synonymous. So as you think about faith leaders, they have a huge part in this process. And I will say Black churches specifically have been historically filled with women and their families. So you already see the way that Black women vote. Over 90% of us are at least at the polls for certain parties or for certain issues. We are an issue-based constituency. But even as you think about Black men, because that keeps coming up right now, Black men, where are they? What are they saying? I would say that a lot of Black men this Sunday, those that were assigned in pulpits, many of them realized they had a responsibility and took care of it.
I would agree with Shavon is saying. Historically, it is in our DNA. The Black church, Jesus and justice go hand in hand. From the civil rights movement, speaking from the NAACP perspective, we got our message, our marching orders for those who stood in the pulpit and shared a message of hope,
healing, and wholeness. And we're returning to that even to this day. We now need more than ever before a return for the Black church to stand up and issue the clarion call to the community to once again rise up, have courage, and speak on behalf of those who are least, those who are lost, and those who have left out. As my sister Shavon has said, Black women are predominantly those who make up the Black church. And we also know with that powerhouse voting bloc that Black women have, when we show up at the polls, we bring our family, we bring our communities, and we bring our friends and our networks with us. That's why it's so critically important that the church, the Black church, would continue to speak out on the issues that are important to the healing ministry of Jesus in terms of outreach, in terms of healing and teaching, but most importantly, for meeting people where they are.
Absolutely. And as you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen, folk are worn out, right? I've been texting and we've been running phone banks and voters like, stop texting me, leave me alone. But what is hopeful is some of it is they're like, I've already voted, I plan to vote. We are still continuing to reach out because that's not everybody's story. And so there is a sense of pile on, right? It's the never ending conversation around this election. It is politically toxic. And as you know, each day we're starting to see the even racial divide and racial tensions bubble up. It is all under the backdrop of COVID-19 and an uncertainty. I wouldn't even call it it's the uncertainty of the economy moving forward, but our people are literally, struggling as it relates to the next check and where money is going to come to keep the lights. And we're moving into winter, making sure we have resources to keep our homes warm. Share a little bit about our people of faith, right? And so we recognize that this election cycle is around our moral obligation as voters, but also as people of faith, we are resilient in this moment. And so what do you see as you see people around when some of us at times feel hopeless? There is something about the faithfulness of our people.
Well, I'm so glad, if I can just jump in really quickly, that both Shavon and I are associate ministers at the historic Alfred Street Baptist Church. And we are privileged to serve under the leadership of our senior pastor, Dr. Howard John Wesley. And as a community, our church has pledged to tithe the tithe. And we have given over $1 million out to the community to help those most in need. And when you are part of a ministry that is giving out to uplift the community, that's the kind of thing that we're supposed to do. That's what makes America great. And that's what makes our community come together closer again. And that's the call of the church. Not inside the walls, but we are to come in to worship, but we are to depart to serve.
Yeah, and I love the context for resilience. Shout out to Howard John Wesley. We love you, Pastor.
Yes, we do.
We're proud of the work that he's done. You talked about this kind of separation and the divide that we're seeing in our country. And don't think that the faith community is not dealing with that same divide. I don't want to skirt over that. This is an issue that we're finding right now. People hear the word evangelical and begin to go political. For those of us that study this in seminary, evangelicalism is connected to evangelism, meaning going out into the world and preaching the gospel. And the challenge is that that context has been hijacked by a political force. And so when you talk about resilience, resilience is going against what people have been taught in terms of doctrine and understanding that Jesus is the way for us, who guides us to say, listen, we love, we give, we care, and then we take control of the political process. Why? Because the political process speaks to this kind of ideas of morals. And let me just push back on the moral discussion, because what we have to do in church, particularly in the Black church, is get out of our box, our context for moral voting. The question is, who gets to decide whose morals are what? And God is the only judge of man. And so as we come out of being one issue voters, as we encourage Black church voters to understand, listen, don't get stuck on one thing. I mean, sweep around your own front doors, my grandma used to say, right? Check yourself first before you start judging other people. But then think about how your decision to make a vote on one issue can affect things around you, the economy, jobs,
Yes.
education, healthcare. So there is resilience in the Black church. There is resilience in our people, but understanding that that division is not exempt from the church. And we have to continue fighting for that.
Well, I'm going to each give y'all a 1 minute to give the last word to people of faith in this country about this election cycle.
So I can start and just say, listen, faith without works is dead.
Amen.
And if we are not committing ourselves to doing what thus saith the Lord, we are in essence saying that, God, we don't trust you. And so when you don't cast your vote, you are casting doubt on the sovereign God that we have. And so for the faith leaders that are out there, continue in this COVID moment to stay safe, but to get your people to understand that their vote is a part of their ministry. This is a part of what we do. We take care of those that are around us. And so you make a decision around who's going to make decisions for our community. So do not sit this one out. It is not an option. The Lord didn't sit out the cross. That's all I can tell you. He didn't sit out on dying for us. So don't sit out on those that died for us to have this right.
Yes, and I'll just take her from there. Yes, he died, but on the third day he rose with all power in his hands. And it is that power, not the power that sits at so-called power, man's power that sits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We serve a God who is able, and we believe that he will continue to take care of us in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our trials, in the midst of every situation, because he is sovereign and he has it all in his control. But we, my friends, have to do our part. We've got to go out, we've got to stand up, we've got to be counted, and we have to vote. And we've got to press our way with our mask safely and let no weapon formed against us prosper, because after having done all, as Black folks has known throughout generations, we will continue to stand, because courage will not skip this generation.
Well, hey, that was a 1 minute word, a 1 minute word. And I thank both of you for your leadership. And I thank you, we're thankful for this day. So we've got 2 more days. We need to be prayerful, but prayerful with action. So thank you so much for joining the SIP.
Every round goes higher and higher.
Great. Well, we are rounded. This was a power-packed hour, y'all. This fed my soul. It made us hungry and definitely energized our spirits. And so we're gonna just talk a little bit. There's still, every day there's so much going on, Fatima. Like there's always a hot topic.
Listen, but all of the hot topics, I think, amount to one hot topic, because they're all variations of these last few days before the election, where we keep seeing things we never thought we would see before. I just got to ask you guys, have you watched that video of Texas, the Biden-Harris campaign bus almost being run off the road?
Yeah.
I mean, I have, as someone who's been watching Love Country and have been watching some of those scenes, I don't want to give some spoilers away, it sort of turned me out.
Yeah.
Adrienne, what is going on?
Well, so it was that video. There was the video of the folks in North Carolina being pepper sprayed as they marched to the polls. There's the video in Fort Worth of the Trump caravan with a police escort trying to drive through a Black neighborhood and past a Black precinct. And folks turned them around, right? They blocked the street. They said, you got to go that way.
They were like, not in our hood.
Not in our hood, not in our hood.
Wrong turn.
Right. Yes. So I think, it is, what we're seeing is exactly what this administration has asked people to do. And that is to go out and intimidate. And we're seeing that play out. And obviously we should all be very concerned about where this goes over the next 3 days. But I think that the sort of vamping on the bus is just too much. Like that is we are through, we've been through the looking glass, I guess, and just keep getting deeper into Wonderland.
Yeah. And as we head to these final days, I mean, I guess we're less than 72 hours, you know, I'm not good with math, less than 72 hours, that we need to be mindful that we proceed to be safe, right? And that's both by masking up if you're going to vote or volunteer, and that you be aware of your surroundings and don't let things escalate. And, you know, I'm just very mindful of like all heads. I want all sides to recognize this is democracy at work. We all can vote. Like, let's have access to the polls. Let's all vote and let democracy play itself out. And let's not let those who are trying to incite violence bring us there. And that is actually my hope into the next day, is that I am excited about the record number of people voting, regardless of who they're voting for. Let's play this out. Let's not let outside influence, both foreign or domestic, you know, take over our democracy. We can disagree as a party. We can disagree on policies, but we shouldn't have to put our lives at stake, both from a health perspective and certainly not from a potential violence.
Right.
That's right.
Well, we are almost here after all of these days, these last few hours. So as Glenda said, get your masks, get your hand sanitizer, get those good snacks, but bring some calm and peace and patience to the polls, because you may need it.
Yep. And get yourself there. Get yourself there.
That's right. That's right.
We're both like, I don't know where to go from here, but we know. We're both like, I don't know. I'm missing my flowers. And so we are excited about the opportunities that exist for our democracy. And so we will be with you on election night, and the SIP will be back on, all SIP hosts will be back for a full beginning of a debrief on Wednesday at 2:00. So you can join your SIP host, Adrian Shropshire from Black Pack, Fatima Gosgraves from the National Women's Law Center Action Fund, Tracy Sturdivant from the League Action, Judith Brown-Dianis from the Advancement Project National Office, and I'm Glenda Carr from Higher Heights. And we look forward to the final drive to help all Americans vote and have every vote count on November 3rd. So see y'all on Wednesday.
Be safe.
We are clear.